Hello and welcome to a bonus deep dive. So this is an add-on to the deep dive looking at the post-processing system. So in that one, the post-processing, we were looking at it in the context of the built-in pipeline. And I said in that the post-processing works different in built-in versus high-def pipeline and the universal pipeline. Now, the high-def and universal pipelines do work quite similar in their approaches, and I have done another bonus deep dive that specifically showcases what's different there in the built-in one versus the high-def. And so in this one, I'm taking a look at what's different with the universal pipeline. So one of the big things is we don't import the post-processing package. It's not part of the things that we add in. Post-processing is something that is already built in to the universal pipeline. Now, so that's one of the key things, and that's the big initial thing that's already there. What changes is the names of things. So we still have volumes, but those volumes, when we're creating them, those are now just under this separate volume menu. And so we have global and box and sphere. So it's no longer a 3D object thing. It is just its own dedicated menu. So we have volumes. So whereas before we had post-processed volumes, now we just have things that are called volumes. Those still link to profiles. The difference here is that those, in terms of the profiles, those are a volume profile, not a post-processing profile. We also don't need to go and configure anything extra on the camera. It's something that, like in the high-def pipeline, it's there by default, the support for these volumes. And so these volumes can be global or local. I can still be adjusting the weighting, so the strength of the effects there. The range of effects are going to be different. In particular between the high-def pipeline and the universal. So if you've seen the the bonus deep dive for the high-def pipeline, there was a lot more entries in here in the volume. Universal, we just have the post-processing, and we still have the same set of effects. So we can still do a lot of those particular ones we're after. More importantly, we still have vignetting, and it starts with some vignetting by default. Not enough though, so we'll fix that. That's better. But we still have all of those effects. So we can still set up things like bloom. We can still mess with things like the visual tone there. We've got options in terms of color adjustments. So we can still make all of the changes that we can in built-in. It's actually some extra ones that we get there in the post-processing here that aren't in the post-processing stack. So regardless of which pipeline we're using, post-processing is something that we've got access to. The key thing we need to remember going from if we're using universal versus built-in. In built-in, we must add in the post-processing package. We set up post-processing volumes and we link to post-processing profiles. In universal, we do not ever add in the post-processing package. What we do, though, is we make use of volumes, and rather than using post-processing profiles, we make use of volume profiles. They still have the same settings in terms of being global or local. They can still have weighting and priority. We can configure the different effects on them, so they still link to different assets that we can configure. So a lot of our workflow stays the same. It's actually just that initial setup stage that changes significantly. So with one, we are going through and having to import extra stuff, whereas with the others, it's there by default. So that's the main thing. High-def and universal, you have post-processing available from the get-go. You don't need to add in anything extra. That's the key stuff to remember when you're working with these, so that you don't get there and start adding in the post-processing package and you start configuring things with that, and then it's not working because it won't. It can be really confusing to track down those issues. So high-def and universal, it's built in by default. You don't add in anything. And then you'll be good to be up and running with it. And you can still mess with the effects in the exact same way as we were in the built-in pipeline example. The names of things change, but the way we work with them is still the same. And that's all for this bonus deep dive. Thank you.